These are all guys who want it to make sense, who don't serve agendas, and who aren't Vince's pet projects. Jericho, as I said, knows to stay out of harm's way. Ray Jr. is very good. Despite him, as I said, bigfooting people, I find Triple H very compelling. I think he's one of the best all-around performers of his generation, a latter-day Harley Race, if you will. I like Cena. I think people are going to be a little tired of him. I don't know how you combat that. The legacy guys do nothing for me. That's Vince McMahon's homage to twink porn. You know, baby oil, shaved bodies, kind of creepy as far as I'm concerned. The divas are all overused and overextended. Even ones like Maurice, who have real potential, are just totally lost in the shuffle. Nobody ever wants to see a McMahon on TV again. For me, the big pleasure watching WWE TV is right now Jericho and Ray Jr. I think what they're doing is absolutely phenomenal.
Oh, yeah.
Can I ask, when's the last time you enjoyed professional wrestling overall, Mark?
Well, I mean, I enjoy parts of it now. A problem with being involved in it for as long as I was, and while I was only on TV for a little over a year, I was involved with WCW with 900 numbers, internet broadcasting and so forth for about 8 years in total. Once you're involved with it, you become too analytical, and the fun has seeped out of it.
Sure.
I don't know whether that means you could take everything I say with a grain of salt because I'm jaded, but I thought the best period of wrestling I've ever experienced, and I've been watching it since I was a very young kid, and I'm 48 now, was, the mid-'90s to the late 90s, because you had the competition on Monday night that was very tangible. It brought something real to something that we all knew was fake. The Outsiders angle was brilliant. Stone Cold Steve Austin was brilliant. McMahon at that time, when he went from being a kind of peripheral television announcer to being the evil boss, at the time, that was great. They've just been doing it over and over again ad nauseum since then. And ECW, I'll be honest, when I want to watch wrestling for pure enjoyment, I go on YouTube or get out DVDs of ECW from the mid-'90s, because to me that's as compelling a product as there's ever been in wrestling, which is amazing given the low budget they had and really the lack of star material they had. That's why I can't believe Paul Heyman isn't booking a major promotion. Paul Heyman created Raven. He created Taz. He took all these mid-level talents and made something out of nothing time and time again.
Sure. Guys, you're tuned into the Voice of Wrestling. We're going to take a short break and come back with more. When we actually come back, Mark, I've got another surprise for you as you join us. There is well, you speak of Paul Heyman, so I'm not sure. Before we go to break, what's your initial thoughts of Jim Cornette?
Used to know what he was talking about, but that was 15 years ago.
All right. Well, I believe it was this last week. He claims to still know what what he's talking about, and he had something to say about you.
It's so tangible. With the important job he has at TNA, it's really apparent that he's a real wrestling expert.
and he talks, and he claims to know, and he talks at length about it.
Whether we want him to or not.
Exactly. We're going to take a short break. You're tuned into the Voice of Wrestling with Chris Cash, Nick the Man of 1,000 Names, and the new Mark Madden. Be right back.
To become a champion is not just a symbol of power. It's a moment of glory. Triumph.
The boyhood dream has come true.
Respect.
Is the champion.
Now, on a night where every championship will be defended, whose moment has come? WWE Night of Champions. Live Sunday, July 26th on pay-per-view.
There's that big fat guy. What's his name? The big fat mealy mouth guy that got fired from his radio job that used to knock people who were nice to him and his friends, and he sucked up to Eric Bischoff to get a job in WCW on the 900 number.
Mark Madden.
Well, actually, I wouldn't even want to bother with him. I wouldn't want to be in the same room with him because the stink. You know when fat people get mildew under their folds? He stinks so bad. I wouldn't want to be in the room with him because it wouldn't be worth it to have him kiss my ass.
We are back, and we are live on the Voice of Wrestling. Chris Cash, Nick the Man of 1,000 Names, and joining us as the third co-host, Mark Madden. Mark, Jim Cornette, man.
Well, it really hurts to be called fat by a guy who is in such great shape himself. Somebody needs to tell Cornette that junior high recess is over. And as far as me losing my radio job, I wear that like a badge of honor to get away from the worldwide leader and go to Clear Channel Broadcasting, where my ratings have nearly doubled on my new show. And I'm making a lot more money than Jim Cornette, and I'm a lot more relevant than Jim Cornette, and I'm a lot more visible than Jim Cornette, and I'm not sucking up to somebody I don't respect, like Cornette has to suck up to Vince Russo every day just to steal a paycheck. Yes, Mr. Russo, sir. No, Mr. Russo, sir. He sits there and steals a payday from TNA. He rubber stamps a product he knows is crap, a product he doesn't believe in. He's a total hypocrite. He bankrupted Smoky Mountain. He hasn't been relevant to the wrestling business for about 15 years. Jim Cornette's on this big schadenfreude kick. He has his little Kiss My Ass club. He wants to see Vince McMahon broke in the gutter. I heard him say that on another internet interview. What Jim Cornette should really do is look in the mirror because he's become inconsequential, irrelevant.
Well, let me ask you something, Mark. If he brought that up, if he brought up your name, that implies that something had to have either happened between the two of you or, something back in the day.
I know where it all started. I was critical of him. I was critical of Jim Cornette when he did the racist gangsters angle in Smoky Mountain.
Okay.
I mean, that was the lowest common denominator sort of stuff. Well, wrestling in and of itself, guys, is lowest common denominator. But I just thought that went too far, and I wasn't afraid to say so.
So now, but I mean, when you think about Jim Cornette, I mean, he's put up there. I mean, you can make your arguments for Vince Russo. You can make your arguments for Paul Heyman, which you've done tonight on the show. You can make your arguments for an Eric Bischoff, and then of course the other fourth guy that I always hear being put in that same category is a Jim Cornette. I mean, despite your personal feelings toward him, do you not respect what he's done in this business?
Well, I can't respect him as a man because he's just a horrible human being. There's no doubt about that. To know him is to hate him, and if you don't agree with every word he says, he turns on you. He called my house when my mother was alive many years ago when he and I started to not get along and suggested she perform a sexual act on a black man, although he didn't phrase it quite the way I'm saying. Now, he's a bad person. Now, in terms of his performance in wrestling, what did he ever do? He was a great manager. His days with the Midnight Express, he's one of the best managers ever. Tell me what else he did.
Well, I think he's always been known as that, as the on-air personality. I don't really know where he got the fame. Well, I mean, as you said, as a manager, you know what I mean? I mean, this is as a performer, I think that's where it, is where the line is drawn for me. I don't really know what else, he could really, I feel like all of a sudden he took a career turn and people started thinking, all right, now all of a sudden he's just sort of this brilliant wrestling mind. I don't know if that's because he started working behind the scenes. I just feel like he's always been a good, personality in terms of a performer. But other than that,
there's no doubt about that. When he was TNA's authority figure, he did a good job. He's a good promo. But as far as being a brilliant wrestling mind,
right,
I just don't see the evidence.
Right.
And in fact, a lot of the names you mentioned are guys who made their bones on very short-term success. Paul Heyman with ECW in the mid-'90s. But then as soon as they got on the national network, they ran out of money. Paul Heyman was a good wrestling mind, financially well. His acumen left something to be desired. Eric Bischoff had the guts to compete with Vince McMahon head-to-head when not many would, when everybody always wanted to keep the door open for employment with Vince at a later date. Did a great job competing against him, beat him for a while. Vince had to have respected that because eventually Vince gave him a job on WWE TV. But really, Bischoff's lack of business acumen caught up with him, too. His overly trusting Hulk Hogan and a lot of has-been stars caught up with him. Paul Heyman, like I said, very short-term. Bischoff, very short-term. Who was the other guy you mentioned besides those two in Cornette? Oh, Vince Russo?
Right.
Tell me what he's done since the Attitude Era.
Well, he turned a new leaf and became boring, in my opinion.
Did you say Christian or boring?
Do I think?
Sorry, no difference. Yeah, I mean, all these guys are very short-term successes. When you look at the history of wrestling as far as the creative side goes, most of the guys are very short-term successes.
Sure. No, I agree. I mean, I think that it's I think that that's one of the situations where I guess that what they've done in the past for even a very short period of time, I think everybody expects them to be able to do that all the time. And I think fresh faces are good for creativity.
That's the problem that we find ourselves in, I think, with Vince McMahon, what we were just talking about before. I mean, look, here's a guy that's been around for a long time. I mean, yeah, you've had guys like Eric Bischoff, Vince Russo, Paul Heyman, they've had their flashes of if you want to call it brilliance. But, realistically, Vince McMahon is the only guy who's had the opportunity to have longevity in this business, at least on a national television platform like he does.
Right.
So, what do you do?